Well, it is the end of the line for the Rideau Regional Centre. For more than 50 years, disabled people were housed in this sprawling campus just outside Smiths Falls. At its height, more than 2,600 people called this place home. But when institutional care fell out of favor, the long and gradual closure began, and today marks the final goodbye. Hallie Cotton joins me now with a look at really the end of an era. Hallie, good morning.
Good morning, Kathleen.
So the Rideau Regional Centre has been in the news for years, but I'm not sure that I have a clear picture of what it is.
You know, neither did I, Kathleen, and it's interesting because I knew people who had relatives living in the centre, but until Mayor Dennis Staples gave me a tour last week, I'd never seen the place up close. It's big, like a large university campus. It's even been compared to the size of the Bayshore Shopping Centre. So there used to be something like 2,000 staff members at this place. So almost everyone you meet in this small town has some connection to the Rideau Regional.
And here we are today, though, not a single soul actually living there.
That's right. And it's been a long, long time coming.
Okay, so then take us through the journey. How did we get to this point?
It opened in the early 50s, one of more than a dozen similar centres across Ontario. But even by the mid-1970s and the late 1970s, attitudes about how to treat disabled people were starting to shift. You know, institutionalized care was starting to be on its way out. It was no longer the way people thought about the disabled. Community living was on its way in. The Ontario government announced back in September 2004 that the final 3 institutions for the disabled would close. That's the Southwest Regional Centre in Blenheim, there's the centre in Orillia, and the Rideau Regional in Smiths Falls. Now, ever since that announcement, September 9th, 2004, residents have been slowly moving out into the community. Now, Alison Kazan was a frontline worker at the Rideau Regional for almost 27 years.
And then you'd hear through the room, oh, so-and-so left today. It's like, oh, crap, you didn't go say goodbye. You didn't get that chance to. And that was harder and harder. Or me right down. It did. Very long, slow, almost cancerous-like. Like really, you just kept lopping off.
When the announcement was made in 2004, Kathleen, there were still 800 residents at Rideau Regional, less than half that many 2 years later, and the final half dozen residents moved out just a couple of weeks ago to a group home in Ottawa.
Now, as you suggested, the changes have been a long time in coming, so given that sort of timeline, how did families react?
Well, I want to introduce you to the Scott family. Connie and Dave Scott, they live in Cumberland, east of Ottawa. They had 2 children, one of whom was David. I arranged to visit their home in Cumberland, and like any mom, Connie started out by showing me photo albums.
Oh, yeah, we have pictures. We have lots of pictures.
Charlie Jumper?
I don't think we have a picture of David that he is not smiling, which didn't always represent the facts.
David lived at the Rideau Regional from 1974 until just 2 months ago, Kathleen, when he left at the age of 43.
He was premature, 6 weeks premature, and at that time, nowadays 6 weeks prematurity means absolutely nothing. 40 years ago, it was a bigger issue. The care wasn't maybe as good as it should have been.
Connie remembers dropping David off at the Rideau Regional. She told me she remembers feeling some trepidation for him, but she also told me she felt relief. He would come home to Cumberland for visits, but from 1974, as I mentioned, that's where he lived primarily. That was his home. Okay,
so that becomes his home, and then what does David's life become? What is his routine at Rideau Regional?
Well, it changed over the years. I mean, he was a child when he went in, and he was an adult when he left. But these are some of the activities that Connie told me about. There was school at first. There were therapies. But there were also things like ceramics. He's a great lover of music. He had a tambourine that he loved to play. He loved the Friday afternoon dances that were held at the Rideau Regional. There was horseback riding therapy to help with his balance. There were outings to the Royal Winter Fair with some staff who pulled him out. There were parties. There are pictures of him dressed in Halloween costumes, Christmas parties, family days at the Rideau Regional. There was a heated pool, as you heard Dennis Staples mention, bowling. These were some of the activities that David loved to do, according to his mom.
Boy, that's quite a facility and quite a range of activities. And did she have a sense of whether David liked his life there, what essentially was his home?
Well, it's very interesting because, Connie was frank enough to say that she did have doubts about that.
Initially, in the first years when we take him back, he would be in tears. And then it evolved to the point that as we were driving, or my husband would be driving with him home, he'd hit that far corner and he'd be in tears. And then over the years, he became acclimatized to it, and he went back willingly, happily, we'd walk into the ward with him, he'd just go down the hall and sit down, and that was home.
So then over time, he came to think of it as home. She clearly felt a lot more comfortable with it. So what was her state of mind then as time is running out for it?
Well, she remembers when the announcement was made that she felt fear and despair. But like many parents that are connected with the Rideau Regional, she just didn't sit back. You know, she joined the protest at City Hall. There was a legal action in the courts. She joined that struggle because she felt that the forces in favor of community living were discounting a real need.
There was never any disagreement that those residents who are capable of being in the community should be in the community. It wasn't, that everybody should be at Rideau. No, that was not there were residents that certainly have done well, could do well, and should be out in the community. The residents who were still there, more total care, higher needs, high medical needs for some of them, high behavior needs for some. Nobody was too sure whether they could be actually adequately met in the community.
So, Hallie, where's David now?
He's living at a group home here in Ottawa with several other residents from the Rideau Regional. Connie was anxious when they dropped him off, just like they were when they dropped him off at the Rideau Regional back in '74. She was really worried the staff might not know how to deal with them, although, to their credit, they had gone to the Rideau Regional to shadow with his normal caregivers. But Connie admits it's very early days yet. He hasn't even been there 2 months. So, although she told me he's already scoped out his favorite sofa in the home.
But Hallie, how about how David feels? Does she have a sense of that, how he feels to be out of institutional care and in a group home facility?
It's not clear to her. I mean, she's got her doubts, and she says David doesn't appear to have a preference, at least not yet.
No, as long as both locations are equal. He enjoyed what he had. He enjoyed the activities so much, and it was so evident that if he had the same activities there, yes, he'd be as happy in B as he was in A. How would he vote? I think he would vote for a dance at Rideau. Now, maybe this will come in the community, but we're still waiting to see it.
So here we have the crux of the matter, Kathleen. Institutionalization was yesterday's solution to an outdated notion, perhaps, some would argue. Community living, clearly the way forward, but it has to be more than a philosophy. It has to work on a practical level for families like the Scotts.
But what is the philosophy, Hallie, the central argument in favor of community living?
Well, for that I went to Keenan Wellar, who's the co-founder and CEO of LiveWorkPlay here in Ottawa. He works with adults with intellectual disabilities who are, striving to become more independent. Keenan feels very strongly about what he calls the regressiveness of institutionalization.
You don't have the right to restrict someone's freedom unless there's a really good reason to do it. So we normally institutionalize people because they're dangerous, they've hurt other people, they simply are a danger to themselves or others. By virtue of being born with an intellectual disability, I cannot possibly see how that predetermines that you must spend your life in an institution. So for me, in that sense, it's black and white, and there's definitely no bending.
Okay, but what does he say about people like Connie, who are clearly worried that the resources might not be up to what her son needs, for example, that the kind of thing that would be available at group homes?
Well, he doesn't deny that's an issue, but he says it shouldn't be used as an excuse not to strive towards more integration.
I understand those concerns, and I think it's really important people are really vigilant. But again, I don't think any of those concerns excuse us from trying. Everybody has a right to enjoy the basic quality of life that we all take for granted, which is the right to have the choices that are available to us in the community. Again, I don't think the challenge of doing that is a reason not to try, but it does mean we have to be observant and we have to be ready to criticize when things aren't going well and respond to that. But there's no going back to an institutional way of thinking. We can only go forward.
In fact, Keenan sees things so differently, Kathleen, that he's celebrating today, March 31st, the day Ontario's remaining mass institutions close forever. He's organized a screening of a documentary called Freedom Tour. This is a film made by people with intellectual disabilities who call themselves survivors of institutional care. So he's organized this film and the gathering to celebrate the end of a dark era, the end of the Rideau Regional. Kathleen, you're going to be speaking with Madeleine Meilleur, the Minister of Community and Social Services. She's going to be standing up in the legislature, by the way, to mark this day, the importance of the final commitment to community living, you could say.
Okay, Hallie, thanks very much.
Thank you.